Grace and peace, you guys. Welcome to the Standard of Truth podcast, where we discuss all things social, cultural, political, and theological from a biblical perspective. As you guys know, we are soon to be unshakable with April Chapman. And today, I am so grateful that you have chosen to tune in. I've got a power-packed show, and this episode is going to be a good one. And the reason I'm already confident that it's going to be a good one is because we're going to be talking about a race that is heating up in the great state of Texas, specifically in District 30, where the incumbent Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, she is facing a serious challenger. And let's be honest, you guys, this race for many of us, it's more than just about flipping a seat. It's about changing the trajectory of a community and a nation for that matter that's just been stuck under the same failed leadership for decades. We've talked about overcoming, and we're like, hey, we're here now, we've overcome. And so, my guest today, I would argue, he has demonstrated that he is the man looking to bring about some much needed change. I'm going to be joined today by Sholdon Daniels. He is a North Texas native, an Army veteran, an attorney, a small business consultant, and he knows firsthand about the struggles that everyday families in District 30 are facing. This gentleman, he grew up in a single parent home, watched his mother work tirelessly to build a better life for him and his sister. And he took those values of hard work and perseverance, and he took them along with him from serving in the military to defending the rights of everyday Americans in the courtroom. But beyond his personal story, Sholdon is running on this bold vision, one that challenges the empty rhetoric that we so often hear from these politicians who love to grandstand on social media, but they fail to deliver. All we have to do is say, look at the results. So he is here today. He wants to talk about issues that matter. He wants to talk about crime and education, economic opportunity, but more importantly, breaking free from a system that has left too many in our communities behind. So I am pleased to sit down with a family man, a man of masculine exceptionalism that is so needed in this hour. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Sholdon Daniels. Sholdon, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to get right into it. I want to know flat out. Sheldon, tell me what made you decide to step up and take on this fight, because it is a fight indeed.
You know how sometimes you feel like you're somewhere not because you wanted to be there, but because it was kind of the life that chose you, right? That's kind of how I feel right now. So I obviously was very disappointed in the representation that we have on Capitol Hill right now. And so when I reached out for any type of resistance or any type of organized movement that was trying to counter what was happening on Capitol Hill, as far as trying to put biological males in the restrooms and the dressing rooms with our little girls, put them in sports with our little girls, all these different things, I saw that it was out there, but there was no true leader, right, in my community that was kind of championing these issues. And so I knew that I had the ability to lead that charge and to be victorious. And so I felt the responsibility to just step up. And that's what I did. And ever since I've done that, I mean, this thing has grown from myself and my wife making the decision that we're going to step out and do this deal on faith to where this thing is nationwide now.
It is, and it warms so many of us to see someone of your caliber actually take up the charge and put their hat in this fight. So let's be real, Sheldon. We have District 30. They've been
Mhm.
under Democratic leadership for a very long time, right? And many of my audience, I have lots of people who watch me from Texas. We're all wondering, like, what have we been getting for this representation? We know crime is up. We know schools are struggling, and hardworking people, they are just tired. Meanwhile, you've got politicians, right? They, like your opponent, they're very much interested in these Twitter fights than actually
Mm,
fixing anything. So, in your opinion, what do you believe are
mhm.
the biggest issues that are facing specifically that district right now? And how would you actually, what is your plan to make a difference where you believe others have failed?
Okay, so that's a really good question. I believe that the purpose of government should be when you talk about like how does the federal government affect your local community, we should have a system set up to where the worst ills in our society are drastically reduced, if not completely eradicated. So homelessness, crime, even petty crime like breaking into your cars and petty theft, that stuff needs to go away. And what we face in TX30 under this democratic leadership is failed schools. And we have children who look up to the worst of the examples of degeneracy as role models. We have children who glorify death culture and worshiping everything that's going to end them up in a jail cell or in a grave before it'll provide them with an opportunity to raise and support a happy family. And so it's a cultural thing. Recidivism in incarceration rates in my district are crazy. I think we have two zip codes in our district that send more people to prison in the state of Texas than any other zip code um, in Texas. And so you talk about the crime, we deal with that. My solution, right? My solution is so I'm a big proponent of school choice. And I think school choice is what we need right now because obviously, since 1980 when the Department of Education was formed, which was only 6 years before I was born, right? It's not that old. We're not that entrenched into that institution. It's just been a downhill and a downward spiral for our kids as far as the knowledge, the walking knowledge that they have when they walk across that graduation stage. And so, in my district in particular, in DISD, Dallas Independent School District, a statistic came out a couple years back that said only 29% of kids are reading on grade level, district wide. That is terrifying for a 38-year-old dad who I know one day I'm going to have to count on these kids to be taking care of me, right? And running the government and doing the things, right? And so I'm invested in, making sure that these kids get life skills. And I want to see our education. I feel like our education system has wandered too far down this path of just trying to teach politics and social policy and trying to use our public school system to mold children to be more liberal. um, Whereas I think we need to really get away from the politics as far as trying to create sway. If anything, let's create a love for America, right? And let's tell the truth. Um, but I think if we go and install like school choice policies where you have like essentially an education savings account where the money that would go to the school traditionally for that student, whether it's like 80,000 a year to teach this kid, would go into an account and the parents would be able to then spend that money on whichever school that they choose. Because some parents, don't want their kids in public school. They would rather, if they had an opportunity, send them to a parochial school, like a Catholic school or Montessori. And so statistics show that children that graduate from private schools, parochial schools, Montessori schools are way less likely to be arrested later on in life. They're way more likely to get a job, way more likely to start a business and be successful than those who come out of failing schools, which are rife throughout TX30.
It's so funny that you bring up this topic. Just last night, I did a live stream and I was actually just doing a show on these cuts that are happening at the Department of Education, and I played a clip of Randy Weingarten, who was furious and outraged. And she said the quiet part out loud, and she did what I call dry snitched. She literally said, "We already know it's gonna happen with the money, right? Like in Texas, if they get the money, do you know what they're gonna do?" And she said, "They're gonna give the money back to the states, and that money is," the way she framed it, if you don't understand this issue, would make you think that this money is going to rich, white, affluent people. as opposed to the kids in the failing schools that want access to this better educational opportunity, but they can't afford to do so. The nerve of us to want to have
Right.
access to our own tax money, to use it to educate our children in the way that we see fit. I thought it was incredible that you just brought that up. I literally just did a show about that last night. There are so many states who've implemented these ESAs, these educational savings accounts. And to hear someone like yourself articulate this is news to a lot of people who historically may have been voting blue. The one thing that gets parents up in arms, and this is what worked in Florida, is when they gave school choice, so many black and brown parents, they said that was the shift for them because they knew the failure of the school system. You also mentioned something that made me want to talk a little bit about family values and just your grounding is in terms of who you are as a father and a husband. You talked about so many of our young people today are seeing this degeneracy. And these are the things that are elevated and celebrated. I thought it was funny that the Democrat Party went out of their way to elevate
Right.
and celebrate female debauchery and this thug culture within their campaign. Do you believe that they were strategically doing that because they believe that this is who we are, or is this the shift that they want to shift the tide to go into that direction on purpose? What are your thoughts on that?
You know, the Democratic Party thrives on control. And if the people are self sufficient, critical thinkers, independent, right, self determining, why do they need government control in their lives? And so, if you thrive as a party and as an entity on controlling people, right, it serves your interest to sow discord and violence and all of these things into the community, ultimately leading to dependency on you. You create the problem and then you try and sell the solution, so to speak. And so that's the game that they play. That's the game that they've always played. And what's interesting is the people in TX30 recognize this now. I think Jasmine's antics and all the new revelations coming to light by all the wasteful spending and USAID and how she was one of the most vocal ones against that investigation. And then when the idea was rolled around that a $5,000 refund check may be coming back to the American people, she came out vehemently against that idea. And I think she insulted a lot of the hardworking people in TX30 and in Texas and in America, and people are fed up.
They are. I saw someone in my comment section last night say, y'all are not going to get that $5,000, and I have mixed feelings about that. First of all, it's our money. So if the government wants to be benevolent and give it back, I'm going to take it. But the idea that the person was they look at it as a handout, not recognizing that this would actually be our money coming back to us because
Yeah.
it was being diverted and used in a way that didn't benefit us, demonstrates that they didn't understand the argument. And they think it's like the left, where it's like a social program versus like, no, this is actually your money. And
Right.
so, did you have something you want to say about that before I go to the next question?
No, you can continue on.
Okay, awesome. So
Good questions, by the way.
yeah, I tried to plan some really thought provoking questions that I believed would are ground or foundational to your campaign. So, for example, I know you're passionate about small businesses, and we've seen the left. They'll show up for a ribbon cutting or a photo op, but when it comes down to let's cut the red tape. To let businesses grow, oftentimes they are nowhere to be found. And so I know that you actually work with small businesses. Would you like to share with the audience your plan to help entrepreneurs, specifically in District 30, thrive instead of just survive? Because we've got this post pandemic world, and there needs to be some revitalization there. What are your thoughts on that?
And so, again, the people in TX30 already hardworking people. They're already successful small businesses. They really just need opportunity. Okay, they don't need any handouts. It's more a question of open up the markets, remove the red tape that prevents smaller investors from being able to participate in some of the more lucrative investment opportunities that are out there. You look at the Securities Act of 1933, and you see that there are limitations placed on smaller, what we would call retail investors today in 2025, preventing them from even being able to participate in a lot of the investment opportunities that are so glaringly obviously going to be successful that it's such a shame that we would prevent an entire sector of the private investment money from being able to invest in that type of deal. Also, there are rules against communities pooling their money together. So we limit the number of people who can actually come together and pool their money together to create things like a local grocery store, to eradicate food deserts and things like this, or a local laundromat or a local dry cleaner, things that everybody can maybe pitch in 250 bucks a month towards some local co-op or some local for-profit business. But due to legal, federal restrictions, they're prevented from being able to do this type of deal. And so I've always built businesses, and even my campaign is powered by small donations from a lot of people. And so if I'm a big believer in the power of the people, and so if we can remove the laws that prevent me from going into South Dallas, so to speak, and saying, hey, I can get 5,000 people to pitch in $100 a month, and we're going to put a grocery store right here, and all the profits from this go to cleaning up the surrounding quarter mile, and then the rest of that will pay in dividends to all our investors, right? And so that is true community empowerment. That's true unity, and that's delivering real results, and that's the type of leadership that I want to bring. It's very out of the box, but I think it's what's needed right now.
I mean, it is very out of the box, but we've never heard other politicians articulate any sort of plan. What we hear a lot about is voting rights, and I'm just like, who doesn't have the right to vote? To me, that's code for we need to let illegals vote. And then they want to talk about civil rights. But when they talk about civil rights, I don't believe they're actually talking about people who have experienced bona fide discrimination on the basis of some existential reality. It's really trans rights. It's the code word for that. But we I want to address the elephant in the room, who is your opponent, Jasmine Crockett. I've been very critical of her on this platform. Not Yes, her politics, in my opinion, is trash, but just as a Black American woman who's a wife and a mom, when I see individuals like Jasmine elevated, it does make me sad. We've seen a lot of headlines from politicians, but this woman seems to be a little bit more interested in these viral clips than actually serving the people of District 30. We've seen her go through these shouting matches and these dramatic outbursts on the House floor. And it seems like she's auditioning for reality TV as opposed to representing her constituents. What is your take? Do the people of North Texas deserve more than just a social media celebrity? Like what is behind that?
Okay, so yes, the people of North Texas and the people of TX30 absolutely deserve more than what they're getting from Jasmine Crockett. But here's the deal about Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine Crockett didn't get elected based on any past show of successful results. She's never ever been successful in any leadership role that she's ever had, ever. Okay? Before she came to Dallas County, and this is just now being uncovered, before she came to Dallas County, she was in Bowie County, Texas, which is a rural part of East Texas, right? And I don't know how she landed in Bowie County, right? Because I'm from Grayson County, not too far from Bowie County. I know what the people are like there, and how she ended up there, I don't know, but we will be investigating that as well. But she was appointed, or she talked her way into becoming the party chair for the Democratic Party out in Bowie County. Now, part of being the party chair is being able to organize the county, right? And get all the Democrats together and appoint precinct chair, all these things. Jasmine, her performance at just carrying out basic party chair duties was so abysmal, right? That they had to politely invite her to step down. So she got fired from her very first leadership job in politics at the county level. Then she pops up in Dallas County all of a sudden, and she's this Democrat Party darling. She's well funded, right? She's taking pictures with Soros, and and now we're finding that all these so-called grassroots donations that she amassed over these past few years are actually not from people even in our district. The people who they are alleged to have come through don't even know about these donations. And so, where did the money come from? Who's funding her? And does this explain why she's on Capitol Hill behaving this way? The word around DC right now is that even within the Democratic Party, Jasmine Crockett is kind of not taken very seriously as a legislator. She's not going to be able to get any laws passed. She's not going to be able to get anything done. And so the only thing she has left to do to be able to fundraise, to be able to keep her name out there, are these antics. And people recognize that, right? And we're educating voters of this, and the voters are becoming more sophisticated every day. And so this is what's helping to power my campaign.
So the more she acts a fool, the better it is for you. So is this why she is nicknamed Jasmine Crash Out Crockett?
Absolutely, because that's all she can do is crash out. And also that's who she panders to, is those who just want to crash out with their life. Those who are hopeless, those who are apoplectic about the entire process in general, those who would rather go wait in line for the new Jordans than go wait in line to vote. These are the people that Jasmine Crockett appeals to.
Mm. You're singing music to my ears. I find it fascinating because a lot of her antics, it's heavy on the race baiting. We've seen her bring up race. It's always about race. We've seen her and other politicians are absolutely obsessed with making every issue about race or gender or oppression, except when it actually comes to fixing the problems in their own communities. I've noticed Crockett, she's always front and center when it comes to throw out the buzzwords or to play the victim. But when it comes to delivering real results for the people she represents, it's crickets. You're saying that she came out of obscurity, fired
Mhm.
from the one leadership position that she did hold in Bowie County. This is news to me. This, like, I'm today years old learning this, so I'm so grateful that you're bringing this to my audience. But do you think this dark money? Um, it's obvious she doesn't have a passion for the people because it's not reflective in the policies that she's pushing. We know that she's against school choice. In your
Right.
opinion, why, in light of the fact that we know that she's private school educated, right? She went to
Hmm.
a prestigious secondary school in St. Louis
Right.
most of
Right.
her life. Why would
Right.
someone like that, who comes from that background, private PWI, going, she went to Rhodes in Memphis, why would someone like
Right.
that be against school choice when obviously she was given the choice and the option by her parents
Right.
to be educated the way she was educated?
Absolutely. I think the question really is, why would someone like that be the better representative of the people of TX30 than someone like me? Okay, I'm someone that comes from the public school system. I'm someone that attended PWI for undergrad, one of the top ones. I went to the University of Texas at Dallas, and it's not known for being a party school or an athletic school. It's known for being, where the smart kids go. And so I also had the pleasure and the honor of attending, Texas Southern University for law school, which is an HBCU, obviously. And so I got to see both environments, and kind of interact and exist in both of those worlds. And I absolutely think that school choice is the right solution to the problems that we specifically face here in TX30 right now. And I know that because I lived that life. I know what it's like. Okay, and Jasmine just does not. There's this movie out with Eminem. It came out a long time ago, and he's battling this guy named Papa Doc, who pretended to be from the hood, and turns out Papa Doc was kind of like Jasmine, kind of like a fresh Prince of Bel Air upbringing, and he was exposed, and that's what's happening to Jasmine right now. It's like, why even pretend, to be like that when we were happy with you at least trying to act like you respect the office that you're in. It didn't take long for us to realize that she's ineffective as a legislator and that she's in over her head and that she doesn't know what she's doing. And that's where we're at now. But unfortunately, we still have a little over a year to put up with her before, real leadership can step in.
Right. I heard her argue, I can't remember what platform it was on, that crossing into the country illegally
Oh my
it's,
gosh.
it's not a
Oh my
crime.
gosh.
And I was like, let's say it again, Jasmine. Say it just three more
Yeah.
times out loud, slow it down.
Yeah.
Isn't she
So
an
when
attorney?
they say she's an attorney, okay? I don't know any attorney that can say something is illegal, but that it's not a crime in the same sentence and still, respectfully hold their law license. Now, we have this rule in the Texas bar where one lawyer, we can't badmouth another lawyer. But I will say this much. Any criminal defense lawyer in the state of Texas worth their salt knows, right? Just walking knowledge from day one that 1325 is out there, and coming across this border illegally is absolutely a crime, and you can absolutely go to prison for it. And so it's not this civil deal where you can get convicted or you can get held liable, but the worst punishment is just like a money payment, like a fine type deal. You can go to jail for this, which makes it a crime in the truest sense. Now, how she walks around not knowing that, or if she does know that, what her strategy is in going on TV and saying the opposite, I don't know. But what I do know is that the people of TX30 are tired of crime. They're tired of policies that are soft on crime, and they want to see real leadership that's going to stand up to these people and stand up for our country versus, caping for Mexico, caping for Canada and Ukraine.
Right. We actually heard her she articulated that she was on the side of Canada and on the side of Mexico. And I'm like, we're listening to an American say this about the country from
Mm,
Americans that elected her into office. I thought it was the highest form of disrespect. And I get
right.
it. Maybe perhaps in her mind, the constituents that she is appealing to hate this country. Perhaps an argument can be made for that. But my question to you is, how do you help individuals who may, on the outset, for example, I'll use myself as an example. Before I became a wife and a mom, I was apolitical. Like I was voting Democrat, but I didn't know why. I didn't really understand the issues, and I definitely didn't understand the differences in the platform. How
Mhm.
can we masterfully articulate to individuals who they're tired of empty promises and they're like, I'm
Yeah.
sick of both sides? How do
Right.
you articulate for them if they're just not quite sure if they're ready to break away from the party that they've always been loyal to and supported? What is your elevator pitch to them?
You know, a lot of it is they see us coming and they've been waiting for us. Okay, so the change is already happening. Yeah, the wave, I'm riding the wave right now. So luckily I'm not having to kind of lead that charge, and it's just like the perfect set of conditions right now with the Democrats making a fool of themselves, with our side, right, behaving with class and coming with good policy, good common sense policy. And so they drew the line in the sand themselves, and so we're just meeting them where they're at. For example, we give an opportunity to deport people who came here illegally, right, broke the law to get here, and then when they got here they rape, they murder, they kill, innocent Americans. Let's just deport those people. How did the Democrats vote? No, they voted against that. And so I don't have to, that's just kind of one of those deals where I can just show them her voting record. And when people read that, it speaks for itself. Okay. And so her policies do nothing. If you're an American, her policies do nothing for you except cause, death, despair, and destruction. And there's nothing that I can say or do that's going to be more impactful than what she's already done herself.
Wow. We want to make this so easy for you, Mr. Daniels. And it's funny because when I listen to you talk, you obviously you're younger than me, so it just warms my heart to see someone like yourself, a family man, a husband, actually concerned about our children and crime. You know what it's like to live these struggles. You're not some out of touch politician parroting talking points that just came out of obscurity. And because of this, we've seen Crash Out Crockett start to make a fool out of herself. And she's not alone. We're not just isolating her, it's the entire party at this point that couldn't stand for DJ Daniels, which you got to be some kind of wicked to not
Uh,
stand for the 13-year-old cancer patient. How did that make you feel when you saw that?
just extremely disheartened, at the state of our political affairs. If we're to the point where you can't even stand for a multiple survivor of brain cancer and someone who has decided to dedicate his life to serving the rest of us, okay, and trying to make sure that the rest of us are okay. I mean, as somebody who signed up to serve this country, and I feel for those guys, to hear, imagine the people who are enlisted right now overseas, under fire maybe, who turn on the TV and see that their local congresswoman is on there rooting for other countries, talking about she hopes that America fails. Well, who do you think's going to fail first? It's going to be the people on the front lines around the world, Jasmine. Okay, this thing is bigger than you trying to put on a show about something that happened. I don't really even know what her real grievance is. She is always complaining about her family building the White House. I guess we just need to cut her family a check or something for building the White House, and then maybe she'll go away. I don't know. But ultimately it hurt my feelings. It hurt my feelings, and that kid is from Texas. So Jasmine and Al Green, especially Al Green, okay, that kid is from Houston. Okay, Al is a Houston congressman. He should have stood up for that kid, period.
Right. I'm so glad to hear you, articulate that type of righteous indignation, because so many of us were just like, okay, I get it. You don't really have to like this president, but you can't stand for the kid. I mean, even the Breakfast Club, they are ducking strays because people are like, you guys are the lowest of the low. So we've talked a little bit about education. We haven't talked much about culture and family values, and I know that doesn't tend to be on the forefront of most politicians' minds, but for many in our community, with the Black community being beyond the rate of replacement, and there is this divisive issue of abortion that tends to come up, we rarely hear any politicians talk about what type of measurable steps can be taken to restore and reform the family, and not just Black families. I mean, they're all families who are really suffering right now, because of these ideologies that go against and undermine the family. Do you have any thoughts on this masculinity is toxic talking point? As a politician, like, how would you speak to this toxic masculinity conversation, and in the best way possible? Because we a lot of us, is our feelings get hurt when men start speaking like men. How would you address this toxic masculinity conversation?
Men are going to be men. Real men, we've always been here. It's just unfortunately, the left had complete and utter control of social media. They were working with the Biden administration to basically censor real men, to villainize real masculinity, and to destroy the traditional nuclear family. Okay. And they had a lot of different political agendas intended with that whole push. But what we're seeing right now is a return back to the norm. America is winning again. I'm an 80s baby. I was born in 1986. So I grew up with real action heroes like, Bruce Willis and
He-Man.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know what I mean? And so, I was there to see Prime Time do his thing in the NFL. That was my favorite NFL player. And so he's one of the most boisterous and confident men out there, right? Even still as a coach. And so these were my heroes. And I grew up during a time where, we'd come home from school and our parents would just send us outside to go play until the street lights came on, and they didn't ask any questions. we didn't have cell phones or trackers on where we were, and so sometimes I might have stumbled in the house with a scraped up body or a broken limb, and all I might have gotten was an Advil and an ice pack. And so, I grew up, what we call down here, my mom calls it, I got the dirt on my skirt, so to speak, growing up. And so I played the sports, I served my country, and I had my fun. And I want my son to be able to enjoy that same type of upbringing. It's unfortunate when every show that I turn on, I have to sit there and monitor it, right? Because of the things that they try to sneak into the programming in front of these kids. And then I look at some of the examples of some of the men out here that they push in the entertainment world on my son. And I'm just like, son, there are other examples of masculinity. And I find myself having to order old shows, right, from the 90s and stuff like that, to where they're watching the stuff that I watched when I grew up. And just having to show them real examples of what it means to really be a man. I just recently took my kids camping, and just getting them out there in nature and making sure that they're connected to reality. That's the best way that I can put it. And so I want all families to be able to have these same opportunities.
I love it. I love it. I could listen to you articulate these values all day long, and this is no slight to you, but what you're saying is not novel. It's just normal, right? It's just regular common
Right.
sense, the way things used to be. And I understand
Right.
there might be some people who listen to you and be like, "Oh my gosh, this is just I feel victimized. I really feel victimized and his
Right.
masculinity is hurting me." My message to you is you need to get a helmet, right? Because this is the
Right.
uprising. These are the type of men that we want to represent us. And I am actively working on my platform to push you guys to the forefront as much as possible. Are there any other policy specific discussions that you want to broach in this interview to help people understand a little bit more about what you plan to do as a representative for District 30 as congressman?
I'm really, really pushing this school choice thing because I feel like it really will be not only transformative of my district, but it will take it nationwide, and you will see a resurgence of a strong labor force in America, if nothing else. Because right now we're competing with AI, we're competing with China, we're competing with the so-called BRIC nations, and all these, what I grew up seeing as third world countries now have some of the brightest minds on the planet. And while, our American kids are, they're focused on making TikTok videos and holding the camera up to their face rather than putting their nose in a book. And so I want to see a return to the trades. I want to see a return to critical thinking skills and artisanship, right? And some of the classical arts and some of the things that, just make you smarter in general. And so if we want to change the electorate, right? You ask, how am I going to convince people to come over to our side? We have to show them what that looks like, and what that looks like is self empowerment. You are going to have to educate yourself and inform yourself so that the decisions that you make are actually informed decisions and not driven by emotion, right? And lies and falsehoods. And this is how you change the trajectory of your life, because now you're building a life on bricks, right? And on stone rather than on sand, as the Bible says. And so this is I'm following the example of Christ. And again, this isn't the life that I chose, it's the life that chose me. And so I have no doubt in my mind that if I just stay at it, and if the people support me and support this campaign, we will be victorious in 2026.
Absolutely. I'm glad that this school choice is like one of the foundational tenets of your candidacy, because we know overwhelmingly your opponent, she's in bed with the teachers unions. The dark money
Mhm.
that funds her
Right.
campaigns exposes her as I call her an operative, because there's no way that you can justify keeping children in a failing school. Like, it's failing. These are not assumptions. We can look at the numbers and the outcomes. We know that Common Core did not work. We know that the ideology they try to position this as if they're ripping Black history out of schools. And that argument falls flat when we know that that's not what's happening. When we try to extract and remove critical race theory out of these schools, she interprets that and then filters that down to her constituents as they're trying to rip our history out because, we built this country. And so it's important for candidates like yourself, every time she blurts out a lie, I
Hmm.
am begging you to be able to break it down so that a C student can just understand and reinterpret what she's actually saying, and you
Right.
lead with the truth. I do believe we
Right.
have truth on our side, but it takes someone with the charisma and not, they don't want to emotionally manipulate. We need people like you to be able to articulate these things, and whatever I can do to continue to push your message to the forefront, I'm willing to do that. You're definitely what we need in this hour.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, you talk about curriculum, and critical race theory specifically. Do we have time? Do I have time to speak on that?
We absolutely do.
Okay. Just briefly, I think the confusion is that people aren't trying to take away, the history around the struggle for civil rights. I think what it is there needs to be a more holistic approach to American history. And this is what helped knock the chip off my shoulder about, the whole black versus white thing. As we're raised in the South, that's how a lot of us come up to feel so alone in this country as black people. But when you learn about Black Reconstruction era, you learn about how the Republican Party was formed and who formed it and why. You learn about people like Charles Sumner, the great abolitionist, right? W.E.B. Du Bois, who does a masterful job of describing the times back then, to where you read his book and you feel like you're alive back then. And you get more of a ground level understanding of the political atmosphere. I think coming back to the Republican Party doesn't sound so bad to people of color, because it's not a question of going to the party, it's about coming back. We started the party. And so that's what needs to be taught in schools. That was the one time in American history where black people and white people actually came together, right, politically. And that's when we achieved some of the greatest things that we've achieved constitutionally: 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. And so we need to get back to that, right?
Right. I agree. I've been not sure how exposed you've been to my content. I've always been considered more of a Booker T. Washington constitutional conservative. I speak a lot about functioning in your freedom, and what I'm
Mm,
noticing is that many of us, we've bought into the lie that we are victims, and we spend a lot of time marinating in the past versus
mm,
accepting um our history as it actually happened, reconciling with that history, but moving away from the perpetual condemnation of white people in this country. I don't see how it moves the conversation forward for you to constantly want, when will it ever be enough? When will you ever
right,
be satisfied? At what point are you going to move
right.
away from that and say, what gifts, skills, and talents do I have that have been placed in my lap? And what can I make of them? If Booker T. Washington can build Tuskegee with actual bricks with his hands and the students, I'm pretty sure we can figure out.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we can figure it out. We just need people
It
who
starts now. It starts now. Go to danielsforus.com. It starts right now.
right. So I was just about to ask you, what is the best way for my audience to, one, support your campaign, and then two, how can we find you on social media?
You can find me on X. I'm very active on X, and you can just reach out to me directly on X. I'm also on TikTok, and we got a YouTube on the way. And so here's the deal: I just did my first fundraiser, and so I'm having to now go out and get a location for the headquarters, and then we'll do the whole podcast thing, and we'll start churning out a lot more content. But for now, you can visit me on X at Sholdon Daniels, or you can come to my website at danielsforus.com. And if you live in Texas, reach out. If you live in the Dallas area, please reach out. We want to get you to come help volunteer, get you a shirt, get you some swag so you can represent for the campaign, and get you a yard sign. And if you don't, then a donation is extremely helpful. Jasmine's sitting on already 1.5 million that she didn't spend from this past election cycle, and I only have about 52,000 that I've been able to raise from about 520 people. And so everybody's pitching in around $100 or more. And so if you can give, we'd be tremendously appreciative.
Well, we know definitely that money is one of the deciding factors that can help push a campaign forward. We need to make sure that you are well funded because not only are we fighting against these dark forces, but we're fighting against the dark forces and their dark money. Now, we saw
Yes.
Kamala was well funded, and all those billions of dollars wasn't enough to move the needle forward for her, but we also want to make sure that your message is amplified. I am glad
Right.
that social media has been unleashed and there is a lot less censorship so that you can get your message out. My question
Right.
is, what type of support, if any, have you received from any current members of Congress that have now been made aware of your candidacy? Have they offered any words of encouragement? Are you receiving any support from them, like, hey, we're in your corner, we want to see you win? You don't have to answer if you don't want
Absolutely.
to, but
No, absolutely. So not even just elected members of Congress. It's all of Washington right now. Everybody who's on the conservative side, on the common sense side. I was just up there for CPAC for a few days, and we did the media rounds. And I met Steve Bannon in person, and we got a chance to hang out afterward. And it was very well received up there. And I ran into some old friends from back home in Sherman. It was amazing. It was very a fun experience. But here's the deal: they know that Jasmine can't get anything done. They're embarrassed that she claims to be representing Texas when she's not even from Texas. Okay, so it's not fair. If you're gonna judge us on a real Texan. Okay, and so they can't wait for me to get there because they know that I'm about results. Okay, I'm about getting a deal done. Okay, I'm not about grandstanding. And they can't wait to have somebody up there that they can work with.
this is good. This is good news to our ears. And my audience, we'll be some mini foot soldiers in whatever capacity that we can to help move you across that finish line, because it's a new day. We're done with Crash Out Crockett. We want someone who's going to go in there as a servant leader and represent well and actually get some legislation passed that's going to impact America. Sholdon, thank you so much for joining me on the
Thank
show
you.
today. You've been an amazing guest. You guys, Sholdon's information, all of his social media handles and contact will be in the description box of this video. Please go and support his candidacy. It's one thing for me to sit and do a video about Jasmine Crockett and her overly aggressive masculine tendencies that are making Black women look bad. But it's another
Yeah.
thing for someone else to be a candidate who says, I'm the change that you need, and then we don't go and support him. So thank you so much for being on the show. Until next time, you guys, grace and peace.